Hello everyone, and welcome to Autocrat. This is episode 103, The Silent Tomb?
Question mark?
Apparently.
You'll find out why.
Okay, go on then.
Well, last time we got up to about 716 BCE and more or less finished off the reign of King Romulus of Rome. Let's see what happens as Romulus gets to 55, 56 years old and towards the end of his rule. So, I'm going to set the scene for you.
Okay.
It's 716.
Yeah, sure.
We pick up with Romulus carrying out a troop inspection somewhere called the Campus Martius, close to the Capra Marsh, which Ovid places near the forests of the Palatine Hill, so one of Rome's 7 hills.
Yes.
It's 716, like I said, specifically the 5th of July.
Which number hill is it? Is it like number 1, number 3, number 4? Which one is it?
I don't think they have specific numbers. I'm going to say 1 because it's the one Romulus founded the city on.
Okay.
Romulus has been in charge for 37 years and is in his mid-50s. Imagine him sitting on his throne, watching the soldiers march past with the Senate standing beside him. Can you picture it?
Yes.
Now picture a severe thunderstorm kicking up.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
Just like that. Just like once happened with his ancestor Aeneas, a cloud envelops Romulus, hiding him from the view of his troops.
Very cool. Now,
the soldiers are alarmed by this. When the storm clouds lift and the sun comes back, the throne is empty. Romulus is gone.
Where is he?
Well, the Senate declare that a wind has swept Romulus into the sky. The troops aren't happy and search for him for a long time. Because, well, I'm not quite sure they fully believe this. Then there are a few voices speaking up in the crowd. They shout out that Romulus has been made into a god. Ovid tells us that this is at the behest of Mars, who asked Jupiter to make his son a god now that Rome did not need one person to promote it and was secure. The story goes that Mars had travelled down to Romulus when the storm began, realising that this storm's appearance was Jupiter giving his assent. Mars grabbed him in the middle of his work, which Ovid says was judging over his subjects, and pulled him into the sky on his chariot. Romulus's mortal form evaporated, and he acquired a godly form. More and more people begin to shout this, and finally everybody is calling out for the divinity of Romulus, born of the god Mars himself. Now, there are a few people who mutter that Romulus hasn't been deified.
Yeah.
Instead, he's been ripped to pieces by the Senate while the storm cloud was hiding him from view, with his body being smuggled out of the Senate house under cloaks after Romulus was chopped up, everybody taking a bit of him and burying him secretly. This is a viewpoint that Cassius Dio agrees with. However, Dio says that Romulus was in the Senate house making a speech to the Senate when the senators pounced on him. They were shielded in their crime because of a storm and an eclipse, which had apparently also happened when Romulus was born. Plutarch backs up the presence of an eclipse, although I can't find evidence for one happening in 716 BCE.
They might not all have been recorded.
No, or historical. Some of them might be literary flourishes, who knows. There is one in 763 BCE, which is, very roughly speaking, close to Romulus's birth date of around 770. Anyway, alternatively, the people themselves might simply have killed Romulus as a tyrant. I would discount this one, given how the soldiers and the common people react to his being gone, as we saw earlier. Whatever really happened, the narrative of Romulus becoming a god spread. Still, the city was restless and becoming suspicious of the Senate as time went on. The situation was apparently saved by the quick thinking of an equestrian, or a knight, called Julius Proculus, who was supposedly an authority when it came to good decisions. Not only that, but he was a good friend of Romulus who travelled with him from Alba Longa to Rome when the city was initially founded. He declared that, at dawn, Romulus, in god form, had come down from the sky and spoken to him. Proculus had thrown himself on the floor in front of the deity when he appeared. Plutarch says he asked Romulus why he'd abandoned Rome, so Romulus instructed him to go to the city and give them a message. Romulus had become the god Quirinus, as it was ordained by the gods that someone who had spent so long on Earth, and having built the best city in the world, should go to heaven.
So Quirrell is a god?
This is not Professor Quirrell from Harry Potter. Instead, it's a callback to the Sabine thing from earlier. You remember the Romans agreed to call themselves Quirites?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Quirinus. Quirites. But yes, if you want...
it all makes sense.
It does. You're still imagining Quirrell, aren't you?
Yes.
Honestly. Anyway, it was willed by Romulus that his Rome would rule the world. I'm going to add the prophecy jingle, by the way.
Good.
The Romans should become warriors, teaching those who came after them that nothing could stand in the way of the power of Rome. With that, Proculus said, Romulus travelled back into the sky. Now, you might be wondering, how does this actually save the situation of the citizens getting really antsy about Romulus having conveniently disappeared? Well, the troops had been upset before at Romulus disappearing and had been suspicious of the Senate probably having had a hand in it. Proculus' speech reassured them that he was not dead, I wrote deal for some reason, but I meant dead, but instead immortal.
He spelled that wrong! He spelled that wrong!
A temple was built to Quirinus, and the decision was made that the Roman kingship should in fact continue. Our primary source, Sextus Aurelius Victor, says that Romulus was worshipped as a god, so backing up what everyone else has been saying. There is a little coda to this story. Hersilia, you might remember the wife of Romulus.
I didn't, but sure.
Okay, well, she mourned for her lost husband, and the goddess Iris was sent to her. Immediately, Hersilia asked to be shown the face of Romulus, as she worked out that this person who showed up was a goddess. Hersilia was apparently worthy of becoming the wife of Quirinus. So, Iris led her to the Quirinal, which loomed over the temple to the divine Quirinus. A star came down from the sky and set Hersilia's hair on fire.
Rude.
She and the star then travelled back to the heavens. Quirinus hugged and welcomed the wife he knew so intimately, and he changed her into a goddess, namely the goddess Hora.
Okay.
So, that's Romulus dealt with. And,
just like that.
Yeah, and I suppose also Hersilia dealt with. After 5 or 6 episodes, Romulus has finally gone.
Okay. Goodbye.
Yeah. Dionysius of Halicarnassus says the only reason that he didn't expand Rome further was this abrupt end.
You mean John?
Yes, I do mean John, sorry. Romulus leaves behind him a city of 46,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry, having grown from less than 3,000 infantry and 3,000 horse, so Rome's doing well. Plutarch says he had ruled 38 years and was 54 years old when he vanished, although Dionysius agrees with what I said earlier, 37 years and 55 years old, so we're going with that. However, there's a bit of a controversy about what else he leaves behind him.
Yeah.
John, is careful to point out Romulus leaves no children behind him.
So who's gonna become next leader of Rome?
Hold off on that, we'll get to that next episode. But
okay.
Also, might not be true.
Oh, who disagrees with John?
Well, Plutarch does.
Of course Plutarch does.
In his Life of Romulus, he states that Romulus and Hersilia had a daughter called Prima, because, well, she was the first child, and a son called either Aeolius or Abilios, listed elsewhere as Avilius, but, you know. A modern source clarifies that this son was Aeolius at birth and subsequently renamed to Avilius.
I like that a modern source about something that is, a myth clarifies something that is just a story.
Yeah, well, I mean, the clarification, I only really read the abstract of this paper, but they stated this version of events, and I've taken that as a clarification. Because otherwise we've got 2 names just running around. However, these children might have alternatively been by Hersilia and someone called Hostilius. Plutarch notes that his source about the children of Romulus and Hersilia, called Zenodotus the Trozenian...
Let's call him Jack.
Yes, Jack, often has others disagree with him. Now, I'm going to say one final thing about this.
Yeah?
Does the epithet the Trozenian mean anything to you? It's a test of how well you remember our episodes.
The first thought that came into my head was Tarzan, so probably not.
Well, you might remember when I say this, the city of Trozen was where Theseus' grandfather was from.
Cool.
That doesn't ring any bells,
No,
does it?
it's been a while.
Well, I saw that and thought, fun connections.
It is.
Now, we didn't mention this at the time, just a final grim little detail about Hercilia, but she was the only Sabine woman taken in episode 101 who was already married at the time of her kidnap. There may have been 30 women taken, or 527, or else 837. Yeah, the 30 estimate is really on the lower side, but all the rest were apparently unmarried.
Okay.
But yeah, that's Romulus, other than a random little story from Ovid about him sticking a spear in the ground one time and it turning into a tree which still shades the Roman people. There was nowhere else to fit that in. By the way, have you been enjoying all these Ovid stories?
I have.
Well, they're going to be gone for a while.
Oh.
The next time Ovid shows up chronologically is in the 1st century BCE.
How far are we from that?
We are currently in the 8th century BCE. So about 700 years off.
Okay, so see you in a few years, I guess, Ovid.
Yeah. So that story about a spear in the Palatine Hill is the last you'll get for a while. But that supernatural story is a good segue to Romulus being either dead or turned into a god. Either way, no longer with us. Now, you asked the question, what happens to the Roman kingship?
Yeah, what happens?
Well, we'll get to that next time.
Alright, well, on that note, have a great time, everyone.
Have a great time. I'm still not used to that being the new form of our outro.
Well, have a great week, month,
Have a good one.
year,
Have a good one.
decade, century, millennium.
Ah! This is too much time.
What's after a millennium?
I don't know what's higher than a millennium.
Light year.
That's a distance.
Oh, shoot.
I mean, eon. Eon is
Have
more.
a good eon.
You want them to have a good billion years?
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that note, have a good eon, everyone, and see you next time.